Welcome back to Coffee with the Crossing. Hope you guys are staying warm out there. My name is Cody Most, and joined with me today is Jonathan Phillips, Barry Holbrook, and Eric Most. This series is all about having fun and telling campfire stories. Hope you guys enjoy it.
Well, I can tell you the craziest thing I've done. I mean, it's not like an athletic thing. When I met my wife, I met her before I even knew Jesus. She didn't know Jesus, but we both got saved in the same year and started going to the same church. And I just knew without a shadow of a doubt that she was going to be my wife. I mean, I prayed about it, and I really feel like the Holy Spirit told me she's going to be my wife. He hadn't told her yet, but we had never been on a date. You know, as a matter of fact, she was dating another guy, and I went and bought a Bible and had her name put on it, but not her maiden name. I put her first name and my last name. And gave it to her for Christmas, and then I wrote and decided to my wife, and so on Christmas I gave my wife a Bible with her name and my last name on it as a gift. You know, we've been together almost 29 years. Some people say
that might be the craziest thing I've ever heard.
Some people say that's romantic, and others will say you're a stalker. But it worked. I mean, she still got it. It was funny. She started carrying that Bible to church, but she put a Bible cover over the Bible so people wouldn't see Tanya Holbrook on her Bible when her name was Tanya Kidd. Mm-hmm. But
I still think every time you share that story with youth, I always picture there's some 8th grade boy out there who's got about 20 Bibles, different girls' names and his last name. Like, I guarantee.
He just kind of keeps working through them.
He's like, what's your name? Oh, hang on a second. Got one for you.
He just keeps scratching them out and putting the next one.
Oh, yeah.
But, hey.
Oh, that's amazing.
So for anybody listening that's single, it worked for me, but I wouldn't recommend it. I mean, because it worked for me.
In tune with the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. So did we move on to the craziest thing we've ever done?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if this is crazy because I've got a few, but I'll try to keep this in the realm of legal. Because there was a part of this trip that we went on. So my roommate in college and some of his friends who, became my friends. I was kind of a background. So every summer our church would join up with some other churches, and all through high school we went to Glendale, Wyoming to Lone Tree Bible camp, and we would go and have camp there. So the year I graduate, and then I'm going to Colorado Christian, they call me and asked if I would come and speak at the camp, and I'm thinking, yeah, that'd be cool. So I tell my friends, and they're like, oh, well, we'll go with you, because one of the friends was from Laramie, and his mom was a professor at the college there at Laramie. And he's like, yeah, I was actually out looking for rattlesnakes one day and come across this skull. Well, so he digs up the skull and takes it in, and the university determines that, it was, I don't know, they determined who they thought it, might have been, and I don't know if it was male, female, or whatever, but they observed it, and then he puts it back, and he's like, oh, I'd love to find that again. And so we're like, okay, well, maybe, on our way to Glendale, we'll swing through Laramie and take the back way and find it. So we take the back road, and he's like, yeah, it was out in these bluffs. And I mean, it's in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing around. And sure enough, we find it. And so my friend, my college roommate, he was huge into Native American Indian culture and finding arrowheads. I mean, anything arrowhead related, he was all over that. Well, he had this grand idea. He's like, I'm going to take this thing home and put it all back together like you'd see the skeleton in a science classroom. So we named him Bob, and we put Bob in a 5-gallon bucket, and took him with us. Of course, we're college age kids. We have no idea. That's probably not a good idea to do that. So we take Bob with us, and then we go on to the camp, and we're camping out in the mountains, and on our way, the next morning, we're on our way to the camp. Well, we pass all of these buses on the way to the mountains. Well, it ended up all the kids from the camp were going to the mountains. So we turned around and we're following them. So we're behind the last bus, and the entire way, there's a kid in the back of the bus flipping us off. And it was just hilarious to me, because I'm like, I wonder if he has any idea he's flipping off the speaker for that night. Mm-hmm. So be careful who you flip off. You just never know.
That's the only reason.
How it's going to come back around. So it was fun that night. While I was speaking, I was like, yeah, you should be careful who you flip off, because it could be the speaker. And that kid just sunk down in his seat. So anyway, later that night, we camped out on the cliffs at Glendale Reservoir, and if you've never been at Glendale Reservoir, there's some cliffs there, and they're super high, usually. And so all of my friends, I think there was 5 of us that went. We decided it was midnight, so it's pitch dark, and except for some moonlight, and we decided maybe we'd strip down in the buck and jump off of the cliffs.
Is that the moonlight you were talking about?
Well, there is a sketch of my friend CJ's naked silhouette, that I've tried to get out of my mind, and I just can't do it, unfortunately. But I'll tell you what, that might be one of the scariest things, is to jump off, 30, 40-foot cliffs in the buck in the dark. And, yeah. So that's one of them.
Wow.
And Bob just stayed in the bucket.
Yes, Bob did not go along on, yeah. But rest assured, when we got home, my roommate's father found out about Bob, and he was very upset. And so my roommate got to take a trip back to Laramie, and Bob is resting peacefully where we found him.
Good, because y'all would have probably been players in a horror movie. Yeah. Poltergeist in your bedroom. Mm-hmm. Floating skulls.
You should have gone last, because I
was gonna say my craziest thing is not very crazy.
Well,
Highway 30 or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yep. So I went to no, it's not that story.
Okay, good.
But I went to college at Shadron for a year, and like my dad, my goal was to get through college debt-free. That was just something I wanted to do, and I did not spend wisely at my year at Shadron. So I moved back home, and I moved in with my cousin, and it was like the first weekend or whatever that I was there, and he's trying to buy a pickup, but we're both college-age guys, so we don't have very much money. So he found one for a couple hundred, up up in Valentine, which is like a 3 to 4 hour drive. And we finally get in touch and get it all lined up. And we don't leave until 10 o'clock p.m. to go up there and look at this truck. And if we buy it, drive it back home. But it's only a couple $100, so we ain't got a clue if it'll make it back home. So we're like, oh, we'll just go up there and check her out. And by the time we got up there at midnight or a little after. And we drove it around. He decides to buy it. So we start driving it all the way back home. And we get to about Thedford. And it's like 1 or 2 in the morning. And we fill it up with gas. He goes to start it, and the battery's dead. We're like, oh no, this ain't good. We look around in his car, no jumper cables. Look around in the pickup, no jumper cables. And the gas station is closed. And we're like, oh no. Do we just leave the pickup here, or what do we do? And we're like, well, it's a stick shift, so we'll just pull it around behind the car in the parking lot and try and start it. So we tied it up to his car by where the trunk latches. That's where we tied it to, was the trunk latch.
Oh boy.
And we sat there for like 30 minutes driving in circles in this gas station parking lot trying to start it. Then we're like, it's not starting. So we just parked it, and we're like, we'll come back up in the morning and with jumper cables. Well, we get just outside of Thedford, and there's a state trooper parked on the side of the road. So we pulled off right in front of him. My cousin got out, went, knocked on his window, asked if he had jumper cables, and he did. So we drove all the way back to the gas station, jumped it, and then we realized that we had a taillight out, and then ended up having a headlight out, but the state trooper never said anything, so thank you, I guess. I'm pretty sure we just kind of like scarred him for life or something.
And he didn't ask you why the trunk wouldn't close anymore?
Yep, and we had to strap the trunk lid down. We got home about 3:30 in the morning. That was a fun trip.
Pretty crazy. It reminds me of a time that I pulled myself over. So I'm driving back from college in Ohio, and I would just drive straight through the night. It's like a 22-hour drive, and it was about 2 in the morning. I'm on the interstate on I-80, and I realized that my headlight's out. And so I'm like, well, I'm gonna just go to a Walmart or something, find a headlight. And this was so I lived in Colorado. I didn't really know Nebraska that well, so I hit Kearney. And so I'm like, there's got to be a Walmart here or something. So I pull off, but rather than going into town on the overpass, there is a state trooper.
And here's the conspiracy theory guy.
Yeah. No, there's a state trooper on the overpass. And I'm like, well, I mean, it's 2 in the morning. He doesn't have much to do right now. I'm just going to pull up and ask him where the Walmart is. So I pull up behind him. And this is where I learned that you're not supposed to pull up behind a police officer. So I pull up behind him. He whips his lights on, does a full U-turn, and gets behind me with his lights on. And I'm like, well, crap, dang it. He saw my headlights out. And so he comes up to the car, but his hand's like on he's ready to he thinks I'm going to kill him or something. I don't know what it is, but he comes up. And he taps on my window, so I roll it down, and he's like, "What are you doing pulling up behind me?" I'm like, I'm just looking for a Walmart, man. I needed your help to fix my headlight. And he's like, well, you don't ever do that again, and now I'm going to give you a ticket for an out headlight. And I'm like, come on. So he takes my info back to his car, and he starts filling stuff out. And he was just getting back at me. This took literally half an hour to write this stuff down. It's 2 in the morning. There's nothing going on that's distracting him. He is doing this on purpose just to whatever. So comes back, hands me this ticket, hands me my information, and he says, have a good night, get your headlight fixed. Didn't tell me where Walmart was. Nothing. And I'm just all like, well, thanks a lot. And so I start reading the ticket. And this is how I knew it was at 2 a.m. So he marked that I was a green-haired, no-eyed female. On the ticket, literally, it says sex. He circled F. And then on eyes, it said none. And on hair, it said green. And I'm like, you just made me wait for half an hour for that and don't even tell me where Walmart is. Like, what in the world? So if there's a state trooper somewhere in Kearney who happens to hear this and that was you, I want to sit down and have some coffee and just see what happened that night.
What was going on in his
goodness.
world?
Yep. That was fun.
Oh.
Thank you for tuning in to Coffee with the Crossing, where we do an in-depth discussion on different topics. If you haven't listened to previous podcasts, I highly encourage you to do so. We have a new episode every Friday. To stay up to date with us, smash that subscribe button and the notification bell on YouTube, and like our Facebook page, The Crossing Fellowship. We'll see you later.